Oh, good. I was even able to mute myself. You know, you can tell your age on the Zoom when people are going, you're still muted. All the young kids, yeah, you're on mute. Yeah, that happens to me a couple times a day. It seems like I am Marty Ruby and I am an alcoholic. And I have a sobriety date of October the 19th of 1989. I'm as grateful as I know how to be about that right there. And what a treat to get to be with y'all on a Saturday. I think it's Saturday, isn't it? Um, I have a home group, and that is the Buda Big Book group here in Buda, Texas. I know it's always Buda, Buda. We're from Texas. We take things personally, and I'm an alcoholic. That means I take everything personally. So it is Buda, Texas. So that's my home group. Some of us in person, and some of us don't. But I know God's in all of that, and we're going to work it out just fine one of these days. I have a sponsor, God, and she has a sponsor, and I sponsor folks who spokes, and what a wonderful thing. It always comes down to this for me. It's just one holic talking to another, sharing experience, strength, and hope. And what a deal. What a deal we get to do that day in and day out. Should we choose to? Should we get to? So I was a little bit late this morning and I logged on toward the end of Paula's talk, and man, the room just went wild when she finished her talk. I'm so sorry I missed the lion's share of it, but I got to hear Jennifer, and Jennifer always brings that realness. You know what I mean? That realness. And listening to Sharon is like we're getting wrapped up in a nice warm blanket. I just kind of want to go like this every time I hear. And and Robin, I love you so much, and you always blow my heart wide open. And you know what was so remarkable is there were a handful of folks that said they'd never heard an Al-Anon speaker before. And I hope that changes for the whole room today, because those are our sisters too. And they just don't have the allergy, but they got some other stuff, which is why I love them so much. I had many who've changed my life, and of course, Polly and Rena and this incredible crew of people working behind the scenes and in front of the scenes. That what we can have the fellowship we crave, and it talks about that on 152 in our book. It says, have we a sufficient substance? Sure, it says, I know I got to get along without liquor, but have we a sufficient substitute? And it says, yeah, we do. We have a substitute, and it is vastly more than that, right? It's a fellowship in Alcoholics Anonymous and Al-Anon. And here we are today, 100 of us. It's remarkable. In the middle of a pandemic. Come on, y'all. Come on. And it says, there you will find release from care, boredom, and worry. Wow, I didn't come here looking for that. I can tell you that much. And your imagination will be fired, and your life will mean something at last. The most satisfactory years of your existence lie ahead. And that's how we found fellowship. We hope you do too. But I can tell you what, when I was brought here, as my friend says, when I was captured and brought to Alcoholics Anonymous, it didn't seem like it was going to be a happy place to me. So if you're new here, I want to say welcome. We are so glad to see you, so glad you are here. And if you've been here a long time, thank you for all you've done all these many years, so that people like me and people like the 372 rest of could be here too. Because I do believe today that, you know what, as my friend from South Carolina used to say, you know what, y'all can do this without me, but I cannot do it without you. I need you. I need you here. And thank you for being here. So I'm going to talk to you about 6 and 7, right? That's what I've been tasked with. And we'll see how this goes. I always like to think about my personal adventures before and after. See, I've been sober for 31 years. And so sometimes there's this delusion by myself and by many others that because I've been sober a while, that I don't ever do this thing wrong. And that's not my experience. I have had, if I drank for 10, 15 years and I've been sober, mostly, no, I have been sober continuously, abstinent, let's put it that way, for 31 years. I've had quite a few adventures after I got sober because life happens. Life keeps going on. Life keeps going on. So I love that I get to talk about character defects because I got plenty. I assure you. I remember when I got here, and I was so excited about being sober and doing this work and all that kind of stuff. And I got to step 6 and 7 in the big book, and it's like, 2 paragraphs. Couldn't be very important then, could it? Let's just blast it and get to those amends. Good to go. And the longer I stay sober, the more significant these steps become in my life. Because at this, what I believe today and what I read in the 12 and 12 and talk to with my sponsor is that, this is when it talks about this is the step that's the men from the boys, the girls from the women, that what that means is we're moving from that self-centered objective to that God objective. Now, how's that going to take place? Because remember, selfishness and self-centeredness is the root of my problem. Whew. So I have work to do, and it seems very confusing. What they wanted me to do was to put my faith, my trust, my hope, my whatever into a greater than myself that I couldn't see, feel, touch, smell, or anything else like that. And it was like, maybe. Now, it's fascinating. I could do it with the most pressing problem of all, which was alcohol. Oh, yeah. Oh, and it worked like a charm, right? Gave that problem over to my creator and relieved me of it. And sure enough, I, who was a woman who could not drink, I drank every day for years and years. And it didn't matter what the necessity or the wish was. It didn't matter if I had little children, because I did. It didn't matter if I had parents who loved me, who were desperately terrified about what I was doing or where I was or how I was doing. My God, I weighed 89 pounds, flowed. And I was just a mess. I was a mess. You can imagine I had bags below my bags. I was a skeleton and just crazy. You know how we are. You might have encountered someone like me along the way. Anyway, I get in and I have this incredible spiritual experience with my creator because I'm able to not drink. And that, I always talk about the fact that, in the appendix of the spiritual experience, it talks about the fact that we either have the sudden and profound experience, like light thing, we have the educational variety. And I had a combination of both, honestly, because I didn't recognize when I went drinking every day to not drinking, that indeed was a sudden and profound impact on my life by my creator. Clearly, right? But because I had all of these old ideas and this habitual way of thinking and this character, I didn't see it. And I thought for the long time I had occasional variety because that's a level of arrogance I walk around with, right? I have to figure it out. I think I can figure it out, and I don't. And the less I try to figure things out, the happier I am. It's the darndest thing. So when I get to steps and it says, let me back up just a little bit on page 75, because we've done that. It's so important that these steps are in order and they come this way for a reason. And there's a whole design that goes with them. And so when I've done those first 5 steps and I go home and I return home for an hour and I ask, and I have those 5th step promises come true. I can look the world in the eye and I can be alone at perfect peace and ease for the first time, maybe ever in my life, and that begin to feel this of my creator. And then I return home and I ask myself if I believe those first 5 steps. Do I believe that a power greater than myself could restore me to sin? Believe I'm powerless over? Do I believe these things? Ask me all those questions we're so familiar with. Is our work solid so far? Are the stones properly in place? All those questions Bill likes to ask us on page 75. We flip over and it's it's step 6. And it says, if we can answer those questions that we just had on 75 to our satisfaction, then we look at step 6. And it says we've emphasized willingness as being indispensable. That sounds like it's probably important, right? And so it says, are we now ready to let God remove from us all the things which we have admitted are objections? Here's where it gets for me. I love to write that inventory. I love to have my sponsor point out those character defects. Oh my God, that's a freedom, you know it is. And then I get there and I go, well, now let me get this straight. If I give up flirting, because I know it's objectionable, certainly to my husband, but if I give up flirting, does that mean I'll become irrelevant? After all, I'm getting older and all of these kinds of things. And this was a big deal for me many years ago when I was very young. You know, this was a big deal for me. And so it wasn't objectionable. So I didn't want to give it up, right? If I was honest with myself, remember, it says, are we now ready? Well, sometimes I'm not. And that's where that willingness comes in. And this is what I like. I had an old timer tell me very early on. He says, you're a character, young lady. I said, you think? He says, you betcha. We all are. The thing is, sometimes our character becomes defective, right? And that's when we run into trouble. Well, now that made a whole lot of sense, especially when I start to look at that 7th step prayer where it says, my Creator, I'm now willing that you should add all of me, the good and the bad, the part of my character, the kind that we like about ourselves, and the kind of me that's defective. You bet, the kind that I desperately want God to remove. So what's my character? What does that mean? That's kind of a word we lob around all the time. What is my character? And the beautiful description, as we all know it is who I am when nobody's looking. And so here's the deal. And I have so many things that I use barometers to gauge my spiritual condition. One of them is grocery carts. Do I put the grocery cart away? See, it's kind of where I live. So if you don't put a grocery cart away, it's probably going to crash into someone's car, right? That's not good. So, but I can tell you, my spiritual mission is, will I put the grocery? Sometimes you have to walk, halfway across the parking lot to put that thing away. What is my character? What is my character, right? And so and sometimes I'm putting that grocery cart away because I think somebody's watching me, right? And so they'll think I have a character. See how that pride dogs me all the time, and that's just one of the ways. Road rage is another one. When I'm in traffic and I start to think, that guy's an idiot. Who does he think he is pulling out in front of me? And, when I'm starting to have these arguments with people who are in other cars who have no remote possibility to hear anything I'm saying, but I'm at war. I'm at war with these people. Just like it talks about in that third thing, the world and its people actually dominate me. You can see I'm not doing very well when I'm in that spot. And the beauty is there's an answer to that. There's an answer to that, and it's always God. And I always wanted to try to figure it out, and if I could think of the answer, then the answer existed. But I couldn't think of the answer. If I had to take something on faith, my arrogance said, then there is no answer. Now I believe that drunk, and I also believed it sober. See, when I put the bottle down, I really believed I was going to become, I was going to levitate, be this spiritual giant. But the truth of the matter is I put the bottle down and things got worse. It was already hard to be me. And then when I took away my solution, now it's super hard to be me. Wow. And so that when I talk fish and substitute, boy, do I ever need it. But let me go back to 6 when it talks about objectionable. And I think that's a really significant word in that step. Of course it is. And so I have to look words up all the time. And what does it tell me objectionable means? It says it's arousing distaste or opposition, unpleasant or offensive. And boy, oh boy, it's fascinating. I can absolutely arouse distaste, opposition, and unpleasantness in myself. And for a long time, I thought that's the only thing I needed to be concerned with in step 6 is that place where is it objectionable to me? And today, you know what? I had a very interesting thing with my husband one time. Married 25 years. We've been together 25 years. I've been married. I'm going to lie to you. We've been together 25 years. It was a very lengthy engagement. Um, After all, I rushed into the marriage before that, so I took my time on this one. And I remember one day I had done something. I It's so great that I cannot remember what infraction I had committed. What and but the bottom line is, I remember my husband was very upset with me. My husband's name is Cecil. Cecil was very upset with me, and he was mad. He was mad at me. And I was trying to clean it up. I was doing that 10 step. I was trying to make those amends properly and all that kind of good stuff, because I'm a good AA, y'all. And so I started trying to do it, and this is how it went. I said, "Oh, honey, I am so sorry. I just want you to know I never meant to hurt you. I just didn't think about you." As if that was better, right? And when he looked at me with this absolute pained look on his face, and he said to me, "That right there is the cut of all. You didn't think of me at all." Well, you had me there, right? My thoughtless, inconsiderate, disrespectful. These are character defects I still pack around. I still pack around. So as objectionable as that is to me, it's also objectionable to him, don't you think? Um, so I try to be very mindful. I love that we're talking today about dignity and grace, treating my partner like he's an honored guest. That's been a big message from my sponsorship. Has been I had this West Texas sponsor. She was such a beauty, and she'd say to me, "Now, honey, you need to treat him like the treasure he is." And oh my gosh, that was one of those things. I'm like, "Hey, hey, hey, what?" And I had to unlearn all of those old ideas I had, all those ways of operating that I thought mattered. And so what really matters is how much I love them in the midst of my career. So, but I love to tell I got a lot of character defects, and I think the definition of humility for me today is having a clear understanding of who and what I really am, and who I am is an alcoholic, for sure. First and foremost, I'm an alcoholic, and I always want to remember that. And I also remember saying to a sponsor when I was, a 90-day wonder. I was, right? And I was going to sit here and tell you how to do AA when I had about 90 days. And I remember telling my sponsor at that time that, I had some crisis du jour. And I said, "Well, it's not like I'm going to drink or anything." And she said to me, "What makes you so sure? Are you no longer over alcohol?" So I have to remember as an alcoholic that I'm always powerless over alcohol. I'm just as powerless as I was then. Now, my other personal favorite is self-righteous indignation. Boy, oh boy, oh boy. And it always shows up in my inventories as disrespect. Somebody's disrespected me, right? And so now my response to that disrespect is to say, "You're not going to tell me let me tell you what you're not going to do. Let me tell you how the cow ate the cabbage." And I remember I had a value of being able to get all up in your face. And I thought I was powerful when I was in that. I love the line that says, "As in war, the victor only seemed to win." And I spent so much of my life doing that. Um, and it's with God's help. All of these character defects, none of them, if I think for 1 minute that I'm just going to try harder or be nicer or get kinder or be more thoughtful, that has not been my experience. It doesn't work like that for me. It has. But the moment I connect with my creator, the moment I ask for God's help to build with me as he sees fit, then everything can change for me. Uh, I, I can tell you, one of the things that I love to do, a long time, I've been working for outside the house for most of my life, like past 25, 20 years. And man, oh man, I've had a handful of bosses over these years. And I remember I love to get up in the morning, complain about complain about my boss, tell you how bad my life is, and go to work and be mad. I mean, this was like day after day after day. And my beloved husband, he just, I noticed that in the morning, he just avoid me, right? He just getting out of my way, just getting out of my way. And I remember, I was going on about this boss and that boss, blah, blah, blah. And he says, you know what? It seems to me as though you've had a problem with every boss you've ever had. I said, what are you talking about? You know, and the truth of the matter was, when he brought that to my attention, I knew he was absolutely right. And so the whole thing for me is, I brought such an arrogance, an ego to work, such a know-it-allism, such a prima donna at work, that even though I had a boss, I should be treated as the boss. I thought I should be a co-boss. That was not my task. That was not my salary. And not once had I ever been a team player. Never, never, right? I just sulked or stomped or went in my, or the one, or I'd just be silently scornful in my office. And I love it. The folks I sponsor, we always joke and say, there ain't nothing silent about my scorn. I might not be saying anything, but you know exactly what I'm thinking about. There's no question. So, my gosh. And when I did that inventory and I took it to my creator and I was now really ready to let God remove from us this thing which was so objectionable. Can you imagine? My behavior was objectionable to bosses and my coworkers. Too self-absorbed to think about them. But I admitted it was objectionable, and I asked God to take it. And the next thing you know, and I didn't want to cling to it anymore. And the next thing you know, I had that beautiful intuitive thought that says, what if you went to work like a team player? What if you went to work and tried to be of service? Huh. I mean, see, the thing, I can get so warped in my thinking that I think I can go into Alcoholics Anonymous and be of service all day long, sponsor, folks and get to go to conferences and all kinds of stuff. But if you think I'm going to take that attitude to work, you got another thing coming. And so it's such a fascinating thing. So I have a belief that says I'm either living a spiritual life or I'm not. There is no cafeteria choice, right? It's not a cafeteria plan. I don't get to practice spiritual principles in this aspect of my life, but not over here. I'll be spiritual with kids, but this kid over here who's trouble to me, I'm not going to do it with him, right? And that's just not how it works. They're on a spiritual path, or I'm not. There is no middle of the road solution on this. So I got to tell you, now that I'm beautiful son of mine, I got a son who's 31. I got 4 children. One is my husband's, is my son from my husband's first marriage. 3 are from my first marriage. And I got this son, and well, he's a little different. He's a little different than the other 3. And it's so funny. The other 3 are flung across the country, and this one lives 15 minutes down the road. Okay, he lives 15 minutes down the road. He's the one with the grandchildren. Well, of course he is. Now, I want you to think I am grandmother of the year. That's how much pride I have, right? That I'm killing it in the grandma department. I'm killing it in the child raising department, all that kind of stuff. And the thing is, this son and I, we've struggled. We've struggled for about the last 14 or 15 years. It's no doubt. Now things can get better, and then things get worse, and then we have a little blow up, and we do all this kind of stuff. And I get my feelings hurt. Oh, I get my feelings hurt so bad. And last June, my son was at our house and had the kids there. His family was at our house, and his wife and children, and he got super angry of all things over politics. He got super angry. He gathered up his family and he left. Well, I'm on the phone with my sponsor, and I'm like, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, I've seen this show before, and what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? Because I wanted it to go different this time. I needed direction. I wanted to be on a spiritual path. But I'm going to tell you, I don't have any idea to do it when it's someone I love that much who's that close. I don't have enough. I got nothing, right? So I ask her, and she gives me that beautiful direction we all know about. We've all heard it if we've been around. She says, I want you to call him and text him at least once a week, preferably more. Now, I love my sponsor, and I respect her completely. And when I take her time to ask for her direction, and then she gives it to me, you better know I'm going to take it. You better know I'm going to take it to the letter. So I started doing this. Now I can tell you, my son, he always respond. Might be kind of a guttural utterance, but he would always answer me. And now he never reached out, but he'd always answer me. And I kept doing it, and I kept doing it, and I kept doing it. It just kept feeling awkward and awkward and awkward and awkward. But I kept doing it. And every week when I talk to my sponsor, at least once a week, every week we talk about my son, talk about my son, talk about my son. And she'd remind me of my love for my son. Now, this is where it gets good. Because, I wanted to practice these spiritual principles. I want God to remove from me everything that was objectionable. I had asked God that he take all of me, the good and the bad. And I prayed that he remove from me every single defect of character which stood in the way of my usefulness to you and my fellows. Now, when I'm praying all these prayers, I don't know what it's going to look like. My mind tells me I'm going to reach out to my son for the next 40 years and nothing's ever going to change. Nothing's ever going to change. I know how this is going to go. Right? Remember, I'm a know-it-all. I know how this is going to go. And here's where it gets so good. My daughter gets married in December. She and my son have a big fight. I didn't have anything to do with it. Didn't have anything to do with it. And he's not coming to my daughter's wedding, to his sister's wedding. That's fine. As my daughter briefly said, well, under the circumstances, I think it's best. All right. But that was painful for me. I remember calling my sponsor and saying, I'm so angry. Do I have to call Meek? There was a long pause on the other end of the phone. That's never good when there's a long pause from your sponsor. And she said, well, you can take a break this week under these circumstances, but I want you to pick it right back up next week. And I said, yes, ma'am. And that's exactly what I did. Now, here's the thing. I've been divorced from my children's father since 1998. I don't even know how many years, 30? A long time. And while we co-parented beautifully, I think, and we raised amazing children together, he wasn't, you know what? I didn't care for him. I didn't care for his wife. And so, but I kept practicing these principles. I kept placing myself in God's hand. I kept saying, God, you know what? You take care of this. You take care of this. Take away my character defects. Help me be useful. Grant strength as I go out from here to do your bidding. Let me tell you what the miracle of all of this was. All of this spiritual work toward my son, right? This action, spiritual action I'm taking toward my son, whether he responds or not, is not relevant. Either love or I don't. I'm either walking a spiritual path or I'm not. I choose to love my son, and I choose to walk that spiritual today. And so this is what I do. And do you know, I had this small, that intuitive voice that said right before Christmas, it's my other children were going to be here for a couple of weeks with their spouses and all this other stuff. We're going to have Christmas, and it always historically has been, oh, we have Christmas Eve here and Christmas Day there, and the kids are all kind of running around even though they're adults and all that stuff. It's difficult for them. It's difficult. So I had that intuitive voice that said, why don't you invite your ex-husband and his wife over for Christmas Eve dinner? And it's one of those moments where you go, hey, who said that? Right? And I knew where that message was coming from. And I knew it was the right thing to do. And of course, I checked my children first, and they were so surprised. They're like, really? Okay. We all sat down and we broke bread together for hours on Christmas Eve. And it was the most wonderful thing, wonderful Christmas we've had in over 35 years. I promise you. And my other son really wasn't there, but that's okay. It didn't make it any less wonderful. Because of this spiritual work, I get to be present with the people who want to be present with me and that I want to be present with. Powerful. I tell you, that's why I can't say enough about sponsorship. When my sponsor gives me that direction and I take it, that paves the way for God to come in and change my life. I can't be more grateful. I can't be more grateful for that. Man, I really got off on a tangent about that. And thanks for listening. But here it even gets better. So I call my son for Christmas and I say, I've got Christmas gifts for the children. They'd been at his wife's family for a couple of weeks. And I've got Christmas gifts for the children because I love those children and I want to be their grandmother. And I'm going to do it. If I have to walk through fire, I'll do it, right? Because I know God will protect me. He will. I know he will. Holds me in the palm of his hands every single time. I go over and I drop off those gifts. And we sit around and we talk about absolutely nothing for about an hour and a half, but we joked and we laughed. We had a good time. And I left. And do you know, the next day, for the first time in over 7 months, my son reached out to me and he sent me pictures. And then he said, hey, we want to come over and see you. What you doing this afternoon? It was like, I was so stunned and I was so grateful and I was so moved and so confused and so confused. And and of course I was able to say, of course, darling, I'd love to see you. Now, they all showed up. We had a wonderful afternoon and I'm still confused, but I'm I'm acting with love and direction that you have taught me in Alcoholics Anonymous. You know, and the thing is, I'm not perfect at any of this stuff. I'm not perfect at it at all. And it tells me that in only in step 1, where we make the 100% admission that we're powerless over alcohol, and that's the only step we can practice with absolute perfection, whether we drink or whether we don't. If we don't drink, we're practicing it perfectly, right? It's abstinence. That's what we're talking about. The other 11 steps are perfect ideals. It talks about spiritual progress. Now we're aiming for perfection. We should always be aiming for perfection. But if we think we're going to achieve it, that's just more self-absorption, right? If I think I need to be perfect, I'm going to be perfect, I'm never going to be perfect. And I love, my sponsor reminds me all the time, darling, the best you can hope for is a human experience. That's as good as it's going to get because you are indeed human. And isn't that a wonderful thing to be today? And so I have a little thing I do for when I'm thinking, when I delve into my neurosis, my neurotic insecurity, and I start to think that I'm not doing this very good, and kind of slip into morbid reflection, or maybe it's too hard, or whatever that might be. And I have a little exercise that I do, and it's not in our book, but it's something that always helps me so much. It says, I like to think, if you've been doing this if you've been doing this for a little bit, ask yourself, I ask myself, how much different I am today than I was 31 years ago. And it's remarkable. Look, just the lines on my face are remarkable. But my attitudes, my whole attitude and outlook upon life has changed so powerfully. So I ask myself, where was I 6 days ago? 6 days ago, I was feeling kind of depressed. I was a little frustrated. I was binge eating chocolate covered Oreos, um, and just not feeling it, right? Today is a completely different day. But 6 weeks ago, what was going on? Oh, I had all of these other things going on. I got started a job and blah, blah, and all that kind of stuff. 6 months ago, we were just getting used to this pandemic thing and the whole Zoom uh, stuff. And then 6 years ago, we had no idea any of this was going to be happening. But here we are. So one more time, I just want to make sure I'm aiming for that perfection. Um, one of the things too, all of those character defects we talk about, and how we bring all those to God, and it talks about the sticking point is honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness. The how that we talk about so often, and am I myself about who and what I really am? These are big questions. I love to ask myself questions, because if I'm asking myself questions, then I know that I'm still in that spot that's curious. If I'm just uttering statements, that's when I am back in that know-it-all place where I am she who must be obeyed. And my God, boy, that's a painful place for everybody. But am I open-minded as to what God has in store for me today? Right? I spent so much time in my sobriety having to know, and I love that it says in the book, circumstances made her willing to believe. She offered herself to her creator, and then she knew, right? And so, am I open-minded to what God has in store for me? And that is what 6 and 7 is all about for me. It's all about it. Like, build with me as you see fit, God. I don't know what God wants from me. I can tell you that it's my heart's desire to do what God wants for me, but I don't always know what that is, right? But I'm asking that He builds with me as He sees fit. How can I be His servant? How can I be His trusted? How can I be His agent? Let Him be the principal. How can I be the child in this relationship one more time? And I misread the 7-7 for the longest time. I thought what it said was remove from me every single defect of character which stands in the way of my happiness to myself. And oddly, that's not what it says at all. But it's just such a great demonstration of how I just read how I just hear what I want to hear most of the time. But it says every single defect of character which stands in the way of my usefulness to you and my fellows. Am I willing to be useful today? Do I want to be useful today? And the beauty for me is I've had the experience that usefulness is truly the key to happiness. And I don't sound like a bumper sticker or anything, but for sure, when I get to sit knee to knee with another alcoholic, sharing experience, strength, and hope, it's the most powerful thing I've ever done in my life. And yesterday I had a gal that I've been sponsoring for a good many years. She called me and she says, I don't get it. I am behaving as badly today at work as I ever have. And I haven't had a drink in quite the handful of years. I don't get it. And I'm like, oh, honey, I do. And it talks down to cause and conditions, which we get to do in that inventory process. See, and once I get to see how I show up in that inventory process, that's when I get to humbly bring it to my creator. Humbly, because I've basically had my teeth kicked in. Because I, I absolutely believe that, if you give me enough time to rationalize and justify, I will promise you, I will convince myself and you that I'm killing it. Right. And I love what it talks about in the 12 and 12, and it says, and how much we will resist that. And getting to sponsor a number of people over these many years, they always want to say, well, here's my inventory, but I'm not willing to give up my money. I'm not willing to give up my sex life, and I'm not willing to give up my work. Right. But anything other than that, I'm willing for God to have. And I'm thinking to myself, well, what else is there? You know what I mean? And it says that the moment we say, no, never, I will never give this up, right? Our minds close against the grace of God. See, God has brought me into some incredible places in my life. I'm not talking about geographically or logistically. I'm talking about spiritually. I'm talking about emotionally. I'm talking about getting to sit in the fellowship with you, and how much that has brought, how rich and deep and meaningful my life has become. I mean, I get to sit on a daily basis with people whose feet are in the path that really goes somewhere. And it's breathtaking. It is breathtaking. And I love that it says a whole lifetime uh, geared to a life of self-centeredness can't be set in reverse all at once. And our rebellion dogs are every step. My husband's has a home group, and they call it the rebellion dogs, because we are rebellious. I think if each of us went to the doctor and say, well, you've got defiant disorder, you think, right? You're not the boss of me. That should be my battle cry, and sometimes people actually are the boss of me. But anyway, the character defects are the obstacles in my path. Character defects are the obstacles that are in my path to my relationship with my Creator. For the longest time, I thought the obstacles that were in my path were you, were my husband, were my children, were all of these kinds of things. And nothing could be from the truth. I love to think about the worldly clamors that block God out, and all those worldly clamors, mostly those within myself. I got a head that is busy all the time. But I got to tell you, I'll close with this because I think my time is done. It says the seventh step, after we've done 6 steps, we become willing. That 7th step is where we make the change in our attitude. What is my attitude today? Is it an attitude of wanting to be the servant that God wants me to be? Or is it I'm only going to give God what the least amount I can get away with in order for me to stay sober? There's a very big difference in those two things. But is where we make the change in our attitude, permits us with humility as our guide to move out from ourselves toward us and toward God. And this has been, for me, the true path to happiness. When I am concerned with you and your welfare and your happiness way more than mine, life is beautiful. When I can invite my ex-husband and his wife to my Christmas Eve dinner table because I want it to be best for my children, because I really, instead of paying lip service to the idea that I want what's best for my children, I actually back that up with some action. It's in these moments I feel the love from my Creator, and I feel the love for my Creator, and I get to feel for you. That's all I got this afternoon. Thank you so.
Woo! Thank you, Marty.
Marty, that was wonderful.
Thank you, Marty. That was awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marty.